Hello, hello, lovely people. Welcome to the Becoming Zesty podcast, or if you're checking in on YouTube, hello to the video. I'm so glad that you're here today. Today, we're answering a super duper important question that comes up a lot for people, especially when they've been in the co-creative manifestation, minding your mindset space for a minute. Because the question that tends to come up over a little bit of time, and some people get to it very quickly, some people it takes a while, but the question that starts coming up is, do I pay attention to reality or not? The current reality, right? That's kind of the question of the lifetime sometimes, of how much are we to pay attention to the reality, because whether you go from the current manifestation teachers or things like Abraham Hicks, or I had Abraham Lincoln so locked and loaded it almost came out. Abraham Hicks, or like our good friend Catherine Zinkina, Manifestation Babe, she's amazing at it. To things like, biblical teachings, right? And parables that Jesus taught about, and things that are currently talked about in churches and various religious areas, and in every culture and every religion, there are spiritual and higher level ideas of what you think about, and your beingness matters as well as your actions, right? And so a lot of times there's things like sowing seeds, and that you can't see them growing, and you just have to have trust and faith and belief that they are there. And so it's really frustrating then sometimes for humans, I mean everybody really, when you are making an attempt, or what it feels like an attempt, to manage that, right? To believe in the unseen, to trust in what's coming that you may not be able to see with your physical eyes, to have the belief even though what you've seen are physical evidences of past failures and things like that. It's a tall order, and when we are making the attempt, and especially over time, it's the length of time that goes on that really breeds the question of, how much really should I be paying attention to what is currently going on? Because so often it's the frustrating stuff that's going on, right? It's like the actual bank account is looking a certain way, and your actual relationship is for real having some issues, or your kids are having some problems and you're having to deal with it, and it's like, thinking thoughts, or no in quotations, you understand that thinking thoughts like, well, I don't have the money now, is an instruction to God and the universe to create. But sometimes it feels very confusing, because you're like, but that is exactly what's happening in my physical reality, and I'm really here. And so it's not that big of a leap of logic to then ask the question, how much am I supposed to pay? Like, am I supposed to pay attention to reality or not? And here's the answer I'm going to tell you right now. And y'all probably ain't ready for it. No, just kidding. But it's yes. Right. So the problem with that is, and why everyone keeps asking, is that it's hard to sometimes conceptualize when there's an and situation in ideas that seem completely contradictory. Like, should I pay attention to reality or not sounds like a yes or no question. And or it sounds like there should be an answer of which one it is, like you're picking a side. But the actual fact of the matter is that it's that discussion, it's one of those topics of discussion where it's truly the path of walking the razor's edge, of actually, for you, deciding at any given moment which way that razor's edge, if it's meant to tip to one side or the other, which way is it's going to go at any given time. And that takes a certain amount of inner authority, which is why the question comes up, because then we have to actually answer it. What are we going to do about that question? Because with that, yes, right? We can't actually pick a side. We are in this world. We might not be of this world, if we believe that. And the question is, if both are true, what are you going to do about it? Because really that question the original question doesn't really get us anywhere. Having to pick a side, I mean, you either sit around and meditate all day long and then are going to be mad or whatever if it doesn't come to fruition the way that you thought of it, or you're like, let me just pay attention to everything that's happening, and this manifestation stuff doesn't work. But the whole thing of it is the act of choosing itself locks you into fewer possibilities. So while we can feel annoyed and from a place of like pettiness, or like, tantrumness, say, I'm just shutting it down, screw all this manifestation crap, and you just have to work hard, or whatever, like, I'm just gonna stop posting and just hope people find me, or whatever it is that's going on. And I've certainly been both. But when we focus on the better question after that one, once we say, well, if it's truly both, then what happens next? What do I want to do about it? Because I think when that question comes out, that's where we each have our own role to play in making the choice. Because quite frankly, some of us have picked paths that involve more spiritual work and more spiritual practices. And it may be true for you personally in your life that there is much less mucking around and paying attention to the actual physical world. For example, someone like Eckhart Tolle. Yeah, I'm reading A New Earth, by the way. Very timely, highly recommend. But essentially, when he is in his awakened state and walking around, right, for the most part, he is not getting looped into the physical circumstances of right this second. And that's why we look to Eckhart Tolle as someone who is respected in the spiritual space, because that's the kind of leadership that he is providing. So it asks us, if we see ourselves as an identity, like for me, I have the identity of someone that is highly spiritual, and my focus is that way, and the gifts that I feel like we're given are in that realm and in that to be used in that regard. For me, then, my version of walking that razor's edge naturally to my calling skews slightly more in the direction of not so much paying attention to the physical. And that means that some of the calls that I make in my life are not logical, don't make any sense, and the people looking in on it are like, what is she doing that she never does the stuff that makes any sense, or why are we doing this, or why are we being led here, or what's going on here, or whatever, and like they don't get it. And that's fine. I don't really, like, when it comes to how I need to live my life, I don't need to explain that, so it's totally fine. But like the actual state of it is that makes so much more sense, and that aligns with my life, and that answers my own question. But it didn't start out with that original one, right? I had to get past that one to say, what does it actually look like to embody that? And then for somebody else, that might be, your partner sitting next to you, just because you are close with someone, or that life tees you up to do things together, does not necessarily mean that they have the same path. Like, their version of walking that razor's edge of this reality is something to pay attention to or not, might look very different, but that does not mean that that's not their aligned version of that path, right? That doesn't mean, like, if you're like, I'm more spiritual, my partner is more 3D or whatever, that statement right there can be whatever it is in your world. But then the question is, what will you do about that? So I will leave you there with that question, and you can always do a little journaling, or if you are someone that processes verbally like me, and that's why we have a podcast and all sorts of stuff, is I just go ahead and open a voice recorder app and I talk. One, because when I write, I can't read my own handwriting. That's the MD vibe. But also, I actually just process my energy and my spirit, my mind processes more easily for me verbally. So that's just an aspect of getting to know ourselves. And if you're someone that's like, I've always hated journaling, well, cool, maybe that's the problem, and you just don't have to do it that way. So try it out if you're not much of a journaler, or if that hasn't been your vibe. You can also get Voxer, the app, Voxer, and you can send yourself back and forth audio. Or if you want a way to do it, I think that Voxer sometimes is paid if you want to scroll back further in time. And so you can, if you have like 2 Instagram accounts, you can send yourself audios and just switch between accounts and go and listen in. And so there are plenty of ways to do that, but it takes care of a lot of questions, and it answers for the future how you're going to handle things when you do some of this processing and thinking work up front, and doing a little deciding on how you're going to live for now and what identity you want to embody, and take it from there until it's time to redecide. So thank you so much for joining me. Check out the show notes for the happenings going on. We have an event coming up very soon that you will not want to miss. So check that out, and I'll see you next time.